good evening, sports fans, and welcome to this edition of Football Talk. I'm your host, Charles E. Smith, Jr. This is an Inside Sports production. Of course, it's playoff time, everybody's favorite time of the year, so let's go ahead and get right into it. As you know, I do not do the show alone. I get only the best. None other than Chris Lardy of FootballNation.com. You also follow him on Twitter at Chris L. Sports. So without further ado, here is the man, Mr. Lardy. What's going on out there?
Charles, great to be back yet another week, 1 week into the playoffs, although a little bit of a letdown with some of these wild card games this past weekend. Looking forward to what traditionally is one of the best weekends of football we have throughout the year. So theoretically, we've got the 8 best teams left, and let's hope the matchups reflect that. Looking forward to it.
All right. Well, you know I always have to give you your props. So FootballNation.com, you have your weekly column there. What's going on with that right now?
I'm in the process of putting the finishing touches on it. If you want to follow, kind of best place to get that is, like you said, at my Twitter, Chris L. Sports. FootballNation.com is the website. The column's called FN Follies. There was so much to write about. I started trying to hit on the whole RG3 Mike Shanahan and RG3's knee, and then you've had the Ryan brothers truly live up to their or live down to their reputations both this week, Rex and Rob. You've had a lot of controversy about the turf at FedEx Field. Just a lot to talk about in what would otherwise be kind of a quiet week. You've got some coaching searches still going on. Yep. So what I thought would be a slow week turned into a lot of material, and who the heck would have thought that Candlestick Park would have a competitor for worst field in all of the NFL. I mean, what happened at FedEx Field was, it's really a shame what happened to Griffin, but for a stadium that new to basically be playing on what you and I probably played in when we were kids back in the 80s is kind of mind-boggling for a league that's so big on player safety.
Yep, that's true. And you talk about the Ryan boys making news again. Of course, Rob Ryan gets fired out of from the Cowboys, no longer their defensive coordinator. You think maybe he winds up in New York alongside his brother?
Yeah, you know what? I think Rex might be the smarter of the two, because it looks like he's not going to hire his brother. Rumor out of New York is that they're going to promote Dennis Thurman, former USC Trojan, to be the defensive coordinator there. But Rex just puts on this charade at the press conference. He and Woody Johnson are buddy, and they're going to hire a GM together. And a year after singing Tony Sperano's praises, he's gone.
Yeah.
The tabloids had a field day with his tattoo of his wife wearing a Sanchez jersey, doing what they think was a Tebow pose. And like I said to someone, you can't even make this stuff up. These guys are just bumbling idiots. And somewhere, I guess, Buddy's probably shaking his head, right?
Yeah, I know. It's I think it might be one of those where it's like from Smokey and the Bandit. Remember when he said, "There's no way you came from my loins, boy. I'm going to go home and kick your mama in the butt."
Great 70s and 80s reference for those of you youngins out there.
All right, so let's go ahead and get into it. First of all, wild card weekend, of course, and you said a little bit disappointing. Of course, Texans take care of the Bengals 19-13, and that was a game. If we look at just that game, I mean, the Texans, honestly, they put that game on a silver platter for the Bengals to take, and Andy Dalton and the Bengals would just have no part of it.
Yeah, I mean, how many times can you have A.J. Green that wide open, even double covered, and you can't hit him with the pass? It was almost like the Texans were daring them to come back in the game, and Mr. Dalton didn't want to grab it, that's for sure. So they had their chances. I think I sent you a text at halftime of that game, and I pretty much said something to the effect of, "I've given up for the time being. I'm going to the park with my kids." And
yeah.
Kind of glad I did, because I caught the end, and there really, while it was close on paper, it really wasn't any great spectacle, and I really didn't miss much, and I probably would have regretted wasting 2 hours of my life had I sat there and endured it.
Yeah. So, yeah, trust me, that's 3 hours out of my life I'm never getting back. But so I take it you got home in time to see him overthrow A.J. Green for the final time, which actually would have given them the lead in the game.
Yes,
Correct.
yes,
Yeah.
the one that was all over the highlight shows for the remainder of that evening. Correct.
Yep. And then, of course, Packers take care of the Vikes 24-10. Joe Webb, now, did he wind up completing 2 passes in that game or not?
Yes, I think I was kind of doing a double take. I think he actually started 2 for 10, which was amazing to me.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking forward to this game, and then I got the alert on my phone about Christian Ponder's injury, and I threw out there on Twitter, if Henry Hill weren't dead, I think the former the inspiration for the movie Goodfellas would have had something to do with that. Maybe he had some money on the Packers, but he's somewhere in the great beyond now. But just amazing to me. You had Ponder come up with a bum arm, and then later on in the weekend, Bruce Arians, a Colts offensive coordinator, ends up in the hospital with the flu. So even a little couple items for you conspiracy theorists out there this past weekend.
Yep, and then that leads to the Ravens, of course, taking care of the Colts, 24-9, and Ray Lewis. We talked about Ray Lewis making his last stand, and he comes back. The arm. He's pretty much he played well, but you could tell he was kind of tackling with one arm there, kind of getting his body in front of guys. But main thing is he was not a detriment to the team, and his team lived to play another weekend.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of Deion Sanders in his heyday. Even though he had 2 arms, he tackled like he had one. But I give him credit.
Sanders
he's fired up. I saw him throw a shoulder at someone once and knock them down. And I was amazed. I actually saw it in person.
Yeah, it was the biggest kicker you ever saw, huh?
Yeah, probably either that or it was probably someone like Dave Meggett, 5'7", or someone of that nature. But yeah, he got to do his dance one final time in front of the home crowd in Baltimore. But yeah, another kind of a snoozer of a game. Let's put it that way to be nice.
It was, and then all of them. Then the Seahawks taking down the Redskins 24-14 after the Redskins had built that 14-0 lead. And all the controversy with RG3 and was he actually cleared by the doctor? First the doctor says no, then later on the doctor says yes he was. So I was looking at that game and RG3 was laboring so hard. And I thought, okay, when they got that 14-0 lead, why not at that point go ahead and make the coach's decision to pull RG3 and have Cousins just finish out the game?
Exactly, and there was a play when the Redskins were driving early in that game when Griffin first came up and started limping. I mean, right there, that should have been a warning. He even went off the field. I believe they adjusted the knee brace. But, at that point, I mean, I know Shanahan said after the game, he asked him, are you hurt, are you injured? I guess that's the new semantics we'll have to deal with in the NFL. But at some point, you've got to say, "Hey, look, I know you're a gamer. I know you want to play. I respect that, but we got a game to win here." And look at the Patriots when they made their run. There was a game where Drew Bledsoe had to go, and I believe it was an AFC Championship game against the Steelers, if memory serves me correct. And once Brady was fine, he was back under center for the Super Bowl. And there's really nothing wrong with that. When you consider Cousins won 2 games for the team this year, it's not like they had Joe Webb coming off the bench. And at one point, my wife said to me in the third quarter, my wife's a football fan, but she doesn't follow it like you and I do. She said, this guy's hurt. And I said, exactly, and they should pull him out, but he's not doing it. And, I mean, really, I'm sure it's hard to coach an NFL team, but if the average armchair quarterback in America could see it. I mean, not only that, like they kind of brought up the Steven Strasburg comparison in Major League Baseball. The Washington Nationals sat him down because he's had an arm injury. At some point you got to say, look, A, we want to win the game, and B, do we want to jeopardize this guy's career? He's our franchise quarterback. He's likely going to be one of the best for years to come. Is it really worth it, even when they were down? Get him out of there. Yeah.
No, I agree, and I think what it goes back to. And they had an article in the online world today about maybe Cutler when he tapped out against the Packers a few years ago, that has something to do with it. But I think that Shanahan faced the same kind of decision that I think that Mike Tomlin of the Steelers has faced with Roethlisberger, and that is if Roethlisberger has to go out there in a wheelchair, he'll play. So some guys you just have to just grab them, take the helmet away, and tell them to sit on the bench. End of story. That's it. And I think that's what he faced with RG3. But, he left him in there. You'd think Shanahan, the veteran coach, a lot more experience, the 2 Super Bowl rings with the Broncos back in the late '90s. But I don't know. You can always second guess though.
Yeah, definitely. And it's kind of ironic when guys come out of games, they get questioned for their dedication, their manhood, what have you. Mm-hmm. And then when they stay in games too long, they question their sanity or their judgment. So it is a double-edged sword. But at some point in this 21st century of NFL, these guys are getting paid a ton of money, and you got to think that that's a sizable investment. And if the guy's hurt, that's gotta come and cross these coaches' minds at some point, like you mentioned with Roethlisberger as well.
Right. Well, it's one thing if the player takes himself out of the game versus the coach using the veto power that he has and just says, hey, you know what, you're done. That's it. And I think if the coach does that, that takes the onus off of the player right there, because he wanted to play, so he's not going to get questioned in the tabloids and in blogosphere and everything else. It's going to be simply coach's decision. I'm not letting him play. End of story.
Exactly.
All right, so let's go.
Then you've got on the flip side, you've got Bill Belichick, who puts half his team on the injury report every week. So maybe that's an alternative, right?
Well, that's a whole other story, and I'm sure that the gambling world hates Belichick for that.
Yeah, he's vindictive against Las Vegas, something we don't know about, but it's amusing.
Okay, so you know what? Let's go ahead and get into the picks of the week a little bit here.
Fire away.
Yeah. You're anxious to get to that this week, right?
Yeah, like I said in our pre-production meeting, a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while, and that was my 4-0 week. And unfortunately, I wasn't in Las Vegas to capitalize on my sage predictions.
Well, you found 4 nuts, so that's pretty good, man. 4-0. I got to give it up to you.
Thank you. I mean, I haven't done this in a while, so I got to enjoy it while it lasts.
Okay, so let's get into the games of this week now. Let's take them in order here. First game up on Saturday is the Baltimore Ravens going into Denver. Ravens at 10-6, and plenty to cheer for here. Of course, you got the comeback of Peyton Manning, the 11-game win streak, the Broncos making the playoffs second straight year here. But also on the flip side, after the Peyton Manning thing, you've got, of course, Ray Lewis, and whenever he loses, that's going to be his last game. So that's going to be the absolute end of an era there. So even if you're not a fan of either team, something to find to cheer for here. And this game is going to be watched with a lot of interest.
Definitely. And especially with the Broncos coming off the bye week and knowing Peyton Manning's history in the playoffs, not the greatest. So there are some compelling storylines here. That said, I just like this Denver defense matching up much better against the Baltimore offense, which ran Ray Rice a lot more. I think they finally figured out that's their ticket to victory. But with Von Miller is just outstanding defensive player. I know he's been getting a lot more national attention, but watch this guy. He's had 30 sacks in his first 2 seasons. I think the only other player to have those kind of numbers that early in his career was the great Derek Thomas. So watch out for him. And you know what? John Fox and Jack Del Rio, all the commentators have been focusing on Peyton Manning. This Denver defense has really played well, so kudos to those two coaches for getting it done. And ultimately, I think that's what's going to be the difference in this game. And I'm sure Peyton, once he gets humming, will start picking apart the Ravens defense. I don't foresee it being a blowout, but I also don't think it's going to be a barn burner either. So I'm picking the Broncos.
All right, well, and remember, too, the Broncos did beat the Ravens just a few weeks ago, 34-17 there in Week 15. The Ravens were going through some, had just gotten rid of Cam Cameron, new offensive coordinator in, so we'll see how they have righted the ship. I'm going to go with this game, and I like the way that Peyton Manning has been playing, and I think that Denver's defense is definitely underrated. Like you said, they're under the radar because of the whole thing with Manning. But you look at Miller, you look at Doomerville, Champ Bailey on the back end also. And if we look at that and switch that over to the Ravens, you got Haloti Ngata up front there. You got Ray Lewis and T. Sizzle in the middle, and then you got Ed Reed in the backfield. I'm looking at, if I look at playoff histories, and like we say, Peyton Manning, there is a drop-off when he gets to the playoffs. I think with Ray Lewis playing and inspiring the defense, and, you know, Flacco's starting to play a lot better, and I think they have figured out to give the ball to Ray Rice. I'm going to go ahead and look for the upset here, the 10-point underdog. Baltimore Ravens going into Denver and ending Peyton Manning's season and letting the journey continue for Ray Lewis.
Wow, I give you credit on two levels. That's A, a gutsy pick, and B, it flies in the face of what you had all but predicted in our preseason show. I think you thought Denver was going to go pretty deep into the playoffs, so nicely done. I know the executives at CBS would hate you if that comes true, but kudos to you.
Oh, yeah, I know everybody wants to see Peyton and Brady match up in the AFC Championship game, but I got to go with Baltimore in this one.
Nicely done.
All right, let's switch over to the AFC. The Green Bay Packers heading up to the Bay Area to take on the 49ers. Of course, the Packers beat the Vikings last week. The 49ers beat the Packers in week 1, 30-22, but of course the Packers, even the Niners, are both very different teams now after the whole season. So how do you see this game playing out here? You got Packers or Niners in this one?
You know, we'll touch on this later in our preseason Super Bowl predictions.
Mm-hmm.
I had the Packers going. That said, partially just off a gut instinct and partially because I'm trying to hedge my bet so I don't look like a fool. I think it'll be a close, well-contested game, but ultimately I like the 49ers defense more than I do the Packers. I think by no means do I think Colin Kaepernick will scare the Packers on defense. I think he's kind of got a nice rhythm going on. I think the bye week will help them, and they're used to playing in that swamp of a field at Candlestick. So I'm predicting this will probably be one of the best games of the weekend. I'm picking the 49ers, but that said, I would not be shocked if Aaron Rodgers went across the bay to his old stomping grounds when he played over in Berkeley at Cal. I could
Right.
see the Packers winning, but for some strange reason, I think defense wins games in January, and the 49ers squeak this one out.
Very, very interesting. Well, you know, here again, I got to agree with everything here, and this is a tough pick. And obviously the Niners being favored in the game here, playing at home. But still, I think that when it comes down to it, the intangibles, I like Aaron Rodgers versus Colin Kaepernick. I think Rodgers can create just enough plays to win, and even though the Packers have the 17th ranked rush defense, but still, they got to find a way to shut down Frank Gore. If they can stop Frank Gore, and the whole thing would be to make Kaepernick beat you, that type of a situation, I think they'll be okay. And even that said, I just like Rodgers. I like Rodgers and the Packers offense getting just enough done to beat them in a nail-biter of a game. And this is going to be a great game here. But I think Rodgers has shown just enough toughness. I like the way that, so whether he has a good game or a bad game, whether it's pretty, whether it's ugly, Rodgers has shown that he'll win however he has to. So I like that factor in it, and therefore I got to go with the Packers here to squeak this one out over the Niners.
Yeah, like I said, I think this will be a good game. I'm kind of hoping it's like that epic 49ers-Saints playoff game from a year ago. Maybe not as much offense, but I'm hoping for a back-and-forth game like that so I can justify listening to Joe Buck and Troy Aikman for 3+ hours on Saturday night.
All right, and then Sunday morning, start you off in Atlanta. How about the Seattle Seahawks? In Atlanta to face the Falcons. Seahawks ended the season with 5 straight wins. We know about the ups and downs of Atlanta, even though they wound up 13-3. But what do you think about this? And also an injury note, defensive end Chris Clemons of the Seahawks. He's a Pro Bowler, but he's going to be out, I think, torn ACL that was suffered last week on that horrific field there in D.C. But what do you think about this one?
Yeah, I think they'll definitely miss Clemens, the Seahawks. That said, I still like their defense. Their secondary is excellent, as a lot of us saw on Sunday afternoon, evening. And just I like the way Russell Wilson's playing. For some reason, there's always one team every year, and it just so happens to come out of the NFC, a team that comes in with a lot of momentum, and I think that team's the Seahawks. I could see them going down there. Yet again, we talked about this with Matty Ice and the Falcons. Until they win the big game, I'm not a believer. They've had a week off. Yeah, they whacked the Giants around a few weeks ago, but other than that, they haven't really. They've kind of been trending downward. I haven't been that impressed with the offense. Defense has a lot of questions, and I could see the Seahawks just pounding away with Marshawn Lynch, and by the time they key on him, Russell can beat you through the air, running with his legs, and I think that Seahawks secondary can shut down the air attack of the Falcons. So I'm picking the Seahawks.
Okay, and you know what? I got to go ahead with you on this as well. And you know, that's the thing is Marshawn Lynch being in beast mode, and the Atlanta Falcons defense not being great against the run. I think they're ranked 20th or 21st against the run. And one thing is, when we look at Marshawn Lynch, he really kind of went under the radar this year. Everyone focusing on Adrian Peterson with that 2,097 yards. And then next, Alfred Morris, a rookie, was 16-13, but third, Marshawn Lynch, 1,590 yards this season and averaging 5 yards a carry, and I think he went for 132 against Washington last week. So he's going to be a load for them to deal with. Then we look at the defensive side of the ball and the fact that, you know, we talk about Seattle's tough defense, but Michael Turner has not gotten it done this year. He rushed for 800 yards. He's averaging less than 4 yards a carry. So that's going to put more pressure on Matt Ryan and Julio Jones, Roddy White, Tony Gonzalez, of course, to get that done through the air. And not only is Matt Ryan 0-4 in the playoffs, but when I look at those games, it's one thing to lose, it's another thing to get beaten. So there's not been a playoff game where Matty Ice has played where he played really well, but his team just lost. There was a truly noticeable drop-off in the play of Matt Ryan in the playoffs, and I think that creates a perfect storm situation with the tough defense and the running of the Seahawks, limiting his possession, so every time he gets on the field, there's going to be that sense of urgency. Home field advantage is an advantage when the crowd is behind you. But when the crowd is sitting there thinking, okay, we got a 13-3 season, we've been 12-4, we've done this, you never won a playoff game, tremendous pressure for Matt Ryan. And I think, I think Seattle gets the job done this week.
Finally, we concur. I like it.
All right. Well, let's go to the last game here, and Tom Brady finally gets to take the field after the bye week. The Houston Texans, after winning that ugly, ugly, ugly game against Cincinnati, and we remember Week 14 when the Patriots just smacked the Texans around 42-14, and the Patriots once again highest scoring team in the league with 557 points. Also, this could be the end of the line for Brady and Welker. I think Welker's contract's up this year, and we'll see what they do there. But how do you see this game playing out?
Patriots. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about the Texans' defense and how well they played this year, but as you mentioned, the Patriots absolutely shredded them on a Monday night. And at the end of the day, if you were to look at this game and see Tom Brady versus Matt Schaub, I think the decision's easy. Add to that the fact that the Texans essentially backed into the playoffs, kept the Bengals in that game. Really, their only offensive threat right now is Arian Foster. If you shut him down, so goes the Houston offense. You give Belichick an extra week to prepare. I'd be worried if I were the opponent. So picking the Patriots and wishful thinking, looking for a Brady-Manning rematch next week.
All right. Well, you know, we'll just take key positions here. You got Matt Schaub versus Tom Brady. You got the mind of Bill Belichick versus the mind of Gary Kubiak. There's mismatches abound here. And also you look at the way that the Texans played last week, and they were horrendous in the red zone. It looks like when they get the ball to the 10, 15-yard line, and that was one thing I texted you during the game, when they have the ball at the 3-yard line, you have Arian Foster on your team, and you're going with 5 wides. Seriously? I mean, come on, man.
Paralysis by overanalysis, I guess, there.
So, yeah, with those factors, everything factored in, and plus the game is in Foxborough, of course, I see no way that the Texans can win this game. So I got to go with the Patriots also.
All right, so I guess we're in agreement on Sunday, and we'll agree to disagree on Saturday.
Yeah, Saturday is going to be really, we're really going to be at each other's throats. I'm sure there's going to be some pretty evil texts going back between us, but, we'll still be friends come Monday. That's the main thing.
Yeah, this is a family show. We'll keep it between the two of us. But I will say, given the fact that I picked the Packers and before the season started, I would not cry if I lose that prediction, because if things work out and the Seahawks do win, we will have an NFC Championship rematch of one of the most infamous games that essentially ended the NFL referees lockout. And we will finally know for sure with full-time NFL referees if this happens, whether the Seahawks or the Packers are the better team.
Very good spin there. Well, you know what? We didn't really do our Super Bowl picks as far as who we thought was going to come out of this whole tournament type situation. So I believe we agree on that as well. Is that correct? When we looked at everything before it started.
Yeah, you had our crack research staff go back and look at the tape, and apparently we were in agreement. And I couldn't even remember. I thought I had said the Packers would go from the NFC, but I forgot I'd also picked the Pats. I couldn't remember if I had picked the Steelers. So great minds think alike. So, I guess I will, even though I've got this little San Francisco 49er hedge reverse jinx going on Saturday, and I guess that part of me still has to kind of forecast the Packer victory. That I am right, I can go pull a Merrill Hodge or someone else from ESPN and boast about how I was right for the first time in 10 years.
Yeah. So, well, you know what? There's the predictions. Then there's as you see teams play. You just kind of, every now and then you may pick against them, but still there's your overall. So it gets kind of dicey. That's why I'm making these kind of picks, saying Green Bay versus New England when the playoffs start. And then maybe you see a team that's playing a little better than you thought. So we don't waffle here, but this is just the way that we picked it. But if you see something, you see something, and you just got to be honest about it. That's just the way it is.
That's right.
Okay, so just about time to wrap things up. Before we go, Mr. Lardy, any final words?
One thing I've noticed about this NFL coaching search and the related to that, one of the GM searches, the Chicago Bears have brought in so many candidates, and I'm actually contemplating sending in my resume. I think they've interviewed every possible person they can, and with that, it seems like no one really wants to take this Jets GM job. And Woody Johnson, Rex Ryan, for the right amount of money, and I hope my employer isn't listening, I might consider it. I figure I could go in there. I could probably evaluate talent just as good, if not better, than the Jets brass has been doing recently. I've got a finance background. I could probably work with the salary cap. I'm good with Excel. So I don't know. What do you think, Charles? Maybe I should apply, or do you think that'd really be the final nail in my career coffin?
Well, the thing is, do you really want to be the meat in a Woody Rex sandwich? That's what I would have to ask you.
No, and I don't. There's have them as coworkers or bosses. Yeah, that's right. Another thing. Short-term gain, long-term pain, huh?
And I don't know, with the whole thing of the coach picking the GM, that is just something. I'm going to help you pick my own boss. How does that work exactly?
Yeah, I don't know. It kind of reminds me of that old HBO show, First and 10, with the football team. They're just really a bunch of bumbling buffoons there. And somewhere the Giants, even though they missed the playoffs, they must just be enjoying every minute of this.
All right, and I think they still got so I guess Chip Kelly came from Oregon, and I guess he got wined and dined and jetted around the country and then decided he's going to stay at Oregon. Is that
he's gotten he's become a runaway bride twice now in the last 2 years when he gets that NFL altar, blew off the Buccaneers, and then I was surprised. I figured if he was going to go to the NFL, it would be with the Eagles, but the Browns are hot and heavy after him too. He must have just looked at those cupboards and said, you know what, my Oregon team's probably got more talent than what I see here. So can't say I blame him. You know what? There's no salary cap in college football, and he's got a lot of Nike money to play with.
Yeah, that's true. And when it's not about the money, you may as well. You got a successful program. That's why there's still talk of, is Nick Saban going to come out of Alabama? To me, go ahead. You have a chance to really carve out a legacy. I mean, in Alabama, there's going to be, you go back and it's going to be Bear Bryant, and then it's going to be Nick Saban, if he stays there long enough, you know? So when you have a chance to do something really special, I'm sure that, Saban, I don't think he travels with a posse or anything like that, so I'm sure his financial situation is fine. I wouldn't want to be in Nick Saban's posse, I'll tell you that right now.
That's right.
That would be a tough gig.
Yeah, but getting back to Kelly, one thing I noted, I threw this out there on Twitter, maybe he's thinking to next year where you're going to have potentially, if Jason Garrett's back and the Cowboys don't win the Super Bowl, that could be an opening that could pop up. Or maybe there are a few other teams are thinking of right now where he may have coaches on the hot seat and he's got his eyes on those jobs. It's kind of a wild hypothesis at this point, but maybe he figured, you know what, are these jobs in Philadelphia and Cleveland ones I'd really give it all up for him? No. So hard to say, and I think that's also what's keeping John Gruden and Bill Cowher on the television side.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll say this, and I've met Chip Kelly, and I do like him as a coach, and I like his kind of, he is that kind of, what do you call it, like piss and vinegar thing going on there, which is sort of fun. I enjoy it. Yeah. If he coached the Cowboys, I'm going to tell you this, he had better have a good lawyer because he's going to wind up choking out Jerry Jones. There's no way that Chip Kelly would put up with that stuff. No possibility.
Yeah, and getting back to the bigger picture, that's why no one wants a coach in Dallas.
All right, so that's about time to wrap it up. So thank you, Mr. Lardy, and we'll see you next week, eh?
You're welcome. Enjoy the games.
All right, so follow him on Twitter at Chris L. Sports. You can follow me on Twitter at The Inside Sports. So for Chris Lardieri, I am Charles E. Smith, Jr. This has been Football Talk, and we'll see you next week. It's playoff time.